And good morning, everyone. This is Arusta, and my co-commentator today is Ezmar. Welcome to the Go Mode Podcast Twitch channel. We are coming for a very hype match of our Gold Sword bracket of the Go Mode Podcast Mentor Tournament between Krithel and DieselMartini.
Yeah, this should be a pretty good match. Last night I saw my first Gold Sword bracket match last night, and it was the closest match I've seen. So you guys should be ready for a pretty good one here. Both of our runners have been ready for a while. We had a little bit of sleepy time waking up and starting this stream, but we should be all ready to go. Our runners have been ready for a while now, so they should be all set to go. So no worries on that front.
Yeah, and so both of these runners have been around for a while. I know Diesel a fair bit better than Krithel. Diesel and I were actually on the same team in the ALTTPR League this spring. Started very well. Mentored by WaltherIV today. And then Krithel is mentored by Senen, who's very active in our Go Mode podcast community. We're going to get ready to start in just a few seconds here.
Yeah, I've actually commentated a Krithel match before, and I've also faced him in ladder. When I faced him in ladder, it was back in May, I believe. It's actually my first Master Sword Silverless fight, and he ended up beating me. So as we get started, we find both runners starting in Link's house and being rewarded with the Moon Pearl. Maybe DieselMartini considered bailing out of the Uncle route. Or maybe just a misclick on that button. Ooh, that is a nice tree pull to see there.
Yeah, and that's really nice for Krithel getting those 80 rupees. It is worth noting, Diesel, having unfortunately dropped the sign, was not able to get the tree pull. Hopefully he gets it on the way out here, because that is very nice to have to be able to do your checks. There, so it does mean that they're in cross that might need to go for. What's that available if you want to do it? Can't imagine anyone would do this, but it is on the table if they need to. We got a map on, I believe it was Hera was a Chris. I believe there was a And so just as an update today, we have, for those of you who joined a few seconds late, my name is Arusta. My co-commentator is Ezmar. Our tracker today is MM2 NES Cartridge, who's really doing the hard work here, keeping us on track, pushing buttons. And also shout outs to our restreamer, Jere Dudecia. Yep, and just getting that confirmation there that Hera is a good crystal, and then Desert is a pendant. They also found Glove in the back of Blind's hut, or the drop down, excuse me, in Lost Woods. And we're about to see the blind check here. Krithel finding a pre-filled bottle there in the basement of Blind's hut. That's always nice to have this early, so you can easily route that in with your CAC checks and you don't have to worry about it. Nothing else pretty much of relevance there, though. And the mirror in the back of well, that's always a nice find as well. Means that once they make it to Dark World, which they are only a hammer or a second glove from, makes it a lot easier to get routing, especially through your Dark World loops. Avoid isolating the locations. And let's see if that early bottle is worth anything here. And it is not. Diesel having to stop off and buy bombs there, but not a huge time loss since didn't have to do much already in the area. Krithel doing the shorter version to check race game. That's always an interesting play that people make. It's always an interesting decision early in the seed. I think one of the general things, and this is what I've heard from some mentors as well, is that people sort of either you do it, have one decision you do the same way every time, or you just sort of make it up based on how much you found. And with 3 items thus far, 3 good items, maybe seems like both runners have decided, save the few seconds to check it. Krithel with the accidental mirror showing us what happens if you mirror after the drop down. Basically, it takes you right back to where you dropped down at. And it is worth noting, if you're joining us late, having seen that map there and they already have the small key, that does mean there is a useful item in Dark Cross. It'd be interesting to see when they decide to route that in, probably with the front of escape, which neither runner has touched yet, having no weapons.
Yes, and I am back. Sorry, I worth noting, we haven't seen the lamp yet, so a dark crossplay is possible. But neither runner right now is super keen on seeing the lamp, since that's just one more thing to indicate an Aghanim seed. The lamp is nice to have, but you'd rather have it after Aga's already dead.
Yeah, Krithel showing us off the secret Houlihan room there, doing the very simple setup. If you have a glove, you just basically bomb yourself into the hole, drop down back of escape hole, and it messes up your camera and puts you right in there.
Yeah, I've only ever done Chris Houlihan room by complete accident. It was a strange setup with just the boots into the uncle hole. I don't know exactly how I did it, but...
Yeah, and it is worth noting with when you walk out of there, as we just saw, it puts you in the Link's house. So if you're planning on saving and quitting to Link's house anyways, as it seems like Krithel does, get some extra money that maybe if he decides to play this out to Zora, has the money and doesn't have to worry about it, which is a very nice use of game knowledge there.
Yeah, so we see on Krithel's side, Krithel, having done that Houlihan room, is all set for Zora, save, 13 rupees. Diesel checking Agina early, not Aghanim, but Agina. Now, this is a good play on Diesel's side if it pays off, because this is a very, very common check to leave until later.
Yeah, part of me wonders if the reason Diesel is doing this might be just the money, knowing that he can't do Zora right now and is unlikely to find almost 350 rupees on his way, that you know, maybe hoping to find some money or something so we could sort of put off that Zora check or combine it with other stuff.
Yeah, getting the Moon Pearl this early makes the fake flippers play very, very attractive, since you can set up for a water walk and check the waterfall fairy for those 2 extra items up there. Mini Moldarm Cave only giving us Ether Medallion.
Yeah, and Blue Mail, which, while of course not required, is nice to have this early, especially with only 3 or 4 hearts heading down to this area. A lot of
It
these
gives you,
crabs can be
yeah,
pretty rough if...
gives you 3 hits from the crabs instead of just the 2. For some reason, the crabs and those pterodactyls in the Dark World are the most sort of surprising enemies for a lot of players. Like, oh, I never realized they did that much damage. Though I certainly wouldn't want to go up against a crab that large. So interestingly enough, both Ice Rod Cave and Agina's Cave, 2 frequently orphaned checks early on, contain the exact same thing, just a full heart container. Not the worst consolation prize, all things considered.
Yeah, and it is worth noting, Diesel is very far from having Zora money. You could theoretically farm it up from there's under this rock here, but I can't imagine anyone would do that because...
Yeah, not from 142, because it's only 20 at a time. Krithel going up here to check another check that some runners frequently consider orphaning. You don't want to orphan more than really 1 check, maybe 2 if you're feeling frisky. Because if you start orphaning a bunch of them, then you got to go collect them all later once you don't get lucky with the logic, because you never do.
Yeah, though it is worth noting with Mir and only being a hammer from Dark World access, it is worth noting that if you come here in the Dark World, you can actually mirror to right where that entrance is. So it can and route it in with part of your pod checks if you end up going that way. Something that doesn't come up a lot, but it's worth keeping in mind for those of you who play the game at home.
Yeah, it's easy to forget sometimes that there are locations like that that are easier to access in the Dark World than in the Light World. Usually it's the other way around, but I have often forgotten that, no, the dock there is in the Dark World and not the Light World.
Yeah, and some interesting routing divergence here. Diesel.
Ooh, okay. So not having Zora money paying off for Diesel, because Diesel sort of forced to make the play over to the eastern area and is rewarded with the Titan's Mitts.
Yeah, and that save and quit looks like Diesel is probably going to go straight to the Dark World, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you get those checks in Village of Outcasts. Since all of the Diesel's checks are still in logic, unlike that waterfall check from Krithel that ended up coming up short, that gives Diesel an opportunity to get a little further in and hopefully find a sword or hammer or something that can be used to defeat Blind, which is a very easily accessible dungeon. Krithel setting up that water walk very nicely.
And basically all those out of logic checks that Krithel just did got nothing. So looks like the play here that Krithel is going to have to do is go to Eastern, get the Titan's Mitts that we just saw on Diesel's screen. It'll be interesting to see if Krithel decides to try to play that out into Eastern itself or just hold off.
I would imagine upon seeing the mitts, making the Eastern dive without the mirror, or without the bow or lamp is going to be a little bit of a hard sell. Diesel finding the hammer in Skull Woods, being rewarded with that early Skull Woods dip. In the first accessible chest, having used that entrance. It's worth noting that that entrance is a bit safer than the alternative, which is dropping down this hole. in earlier versions of the game's logic, the game was not allowed to lock you in here because save and quits were not considered logical exits to an area. So in order to avoid locking you in here, it had to guarantee that you would receive a key in one of these 3 chests. But now it's possible for none of those chests to contain a key, forcing you to save and quit, which if you save and quit out of a dungeon, it puts you back in the light world if you haven't defeated Aghanim and have the mirror. So it's nice to check that front entrance first. Krithel picking up the glove now.
And it does look like Krithel is going to at least check what he can check here in Eastern.
Yeah, I'm not I wouldn't say this is a bad play. It's certainly not as attractive as zooming right on over to Village of Outcasts. But, you know, it could contain something that you'd like to see.
Oof, and Diesel taking a death there, which since he dropped down means it's going to put him all the way back at the drop down spot.
Yeah, and that's why dropping down here can sometimes sort of soft lock you in this area until you save and quit. Because no matter how hard you try, that is where it's going to put you again. And if you don't have a key to get out, you're out of luck. I'm going to take that key, use it up here, take the door. But yeah, Krithel making the reasonable play to go into Eastern, not knowing for sure that that Diesel's so substantially ahead in terms of, you know, world exploration. Just because it's reasonable to assume with the easy accessibility of those rupees that Diesel would have made the same flippers checks play. However, we know that those flippers checks were entirely skipped on Diesel's side.
Yeah, and it is worth noting here that in going to Eastern, while it is certainly a defensible play, you can get 2 or 3 items. Krithel is committing himself to a double dip here, because Eastern is a crystal, so we'll have to come back to complete it with bow.
Yeah, it's not the worst double dip. It's not the best. I would consider the best double dip to be Thieves Town, as long as you're only coming back for the boss. If you're coming back for anything other than the boss, Thieves Town isn't so great. But that's probably the shortest boss route in any of the dungeons. Seeing the big key before the big chest is very nice without lamp. Because if we had to go to that back room to get the key, and potentially an item out of this big chest, that item would be out of logic. So now we know that this item is logically accessible. That red rupee, logical red rupee. So that's pretty big.
Yeah, and looks like Krithel's about to try the dark room, which of course makes a lot of sense. This is our gold sword bracket, and I believe Krithel was 5-1 in the group stage, and Diesel was 4-2. So both of them are very, very solid runners. Don't expect them to have a whole lot of issues here, even without anything to mark their areas.
Yeah, I am usually a slave to logic, and even I will do this room in the dark just because it's pretty easy. It's on rails. That dark room that Krithel just exited is just a 1 tile wide hallway all the way around. If you know where that door is, you don't even need that sword to guide you. You just walk around, maybe take the damage boost if you're unlucky, and hit the little bag of snakes there. Krithel not being rewarded with that Eastern Palace dip. Diesel finding the boomerang on the right side in the chest game. And going right into Thieves Town.
Yeah, I mean, I like this play, especially with Mir. At least to check the first 4. We'll see if Diesel plays it all the way out. It is a crystal, so you have to do it at some time.
With Blue Mail and Hammer, and this being Gold Sword bracket, I wouldn't be surprised to see a full clear at this point.
Yeah,
absolutely. It really depends on how comfortable they are with Hammer Blind. I've done it before with 5 hearts and Red Mail. But it can be tricky, especially if you get really reliant on the script.
Yeah, and Krithel going back to check the Skullwoods, which we know is going to be really good for them, not leaving that hammer. There are a lot of people who will sometimes skip the front side of Skullwoods if you don't have Fire Rod, just hoping that maybe you can just skip the front side entirely, coming back with Fire Rod.
Yeah, because Skullwoods it's an attractive dip because it's easily accessible chests, but it's only 2 items, and they could both be locked behind Fire Rod. So it's a little bit of a gamble, but it's usually a good idea to at least check. And Diesel skipping out of Thieves Town early, it looks like. Not a bad choice. Again, unless you're super confident in that hammer blind strat, it's gonna save time in the long run to come back later once you know you can just lock down that fight. And the boots in the brewery. I feel like I've seen that item there a number of times in some of these restreams.
Yeah, honestly, make the having to go back to the town even feel even more because you know that having done the first 4 through the first half with food very, very, very quick. So.
Yeah, not finding much on the dig game there. I think I actually was looking elsewhere at the time. I'm just trying to
Yep, Ruby. It is worth noting that he still has not done more. Spent 110 whenever he decides to go over there. So,
yeah, he could route it in with Catfish with that mirror in hand. Ooh, Fire Rod in the library. That is a nice find considering we just picked up those boots.
Ooh, and it looks like Krithel. Oh, fake me out. I thought they were going to go for the North Dark World loop, but looks like just going a little out of the way to avoid an enemy there.
Yeah, these are some nice items to have at this point, because it allows you to route in some of these checks that sometimes you have to wait a long time to decide whether or not it's worth doing. But with the mirror in hand, with those mitts, you can do the smith chain. Use the hammer, use the boots to. Well, with the hammer, we can also do hammer pegs. It's a little bit slower since we don't have the sword to misplace the hitbox. But sometimes you can end up orphaning smith chain, and it's slow, but it can be a couple items. So being able to do it fast here is really nice.
Yeah, and as just a small piece of subtle tech there, Diesel deciding to turn in the smith before trying this hammer pegs, which it seems like it's just 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But if Diesel had found a sword, it would make this hammer peg significantly faster. So it doesn't cost you any time to route it like that, but it's potentially a big time save if it had worked out. Because that sword would allow him to do the dash strat.
Yeah, the dash strat, again, if you do an item dash with the hammer, you can knock down pegs, but only if there is a sword hitbox for the hammer to replace. If you don't have a sword, you're holding up the hammer, but it doesn't do much. So we'll see if Krithel decides to continue on in Thieves Town. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to dip out. As I mentioned earlier, Thieves Town is a pretty reasonable redip. If you're going to double dip a dungeon, Thieves Town is the one to do. And not immediately mirroring out tells me that Krithel is going to keep going here.
Yeah, and it is worth noting that, especially in this situation where both runners have partially checked Skull Woods, you have to come back to the area anyways. So it's not like you're leaving Thieves Town Crystal and it's going to be completely isolated.
Yeah, and I think we only saw one item in the front.
I know at least one of those was the compass, so I believe so. Oh yeah, they've got
and we have we do have the small key. So we found the compass, the small key, the big key, and one item. So That makes going through the back a lot more attractive, since you know there are 3 items back here in 4 checks.
Yeah, and chat pointing out one thing which we didn't mention is that Krithel had actually emptied that green potion they got and replaced it with a red in the waterfall fairy. So Krithel has a lot more hearts to work with and a lot more flexibility. So if they want to take the blind fight, they'll have an easier blind fight than Diesel would have.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that is actually very individual by runner. That's the sort of thing that some runners don't find too terribly difficult. And some runners have a very hard time, despite, you know, being relatively evenly matched in other aspects, maybe. But just certain little things, you can have different comfort levels with them. You know, even at the top level. And Diesel finds the sword in Hype Cave as well as the little blue shield that could.
As well as powder. So I don't know, 6 out of 10 maybe. That first sword is very nice.
That's reasonable. It's a little unfortunate being in Hype Cave given the way that we had to access the Dark World. Since it kind of forces you to route all the way down around. With Hammer being in Skull Woods, there's really no way to get to Hype Cave quick. So that being our first sword is a little bit, it's too bad. But Krithel here demonstrating some aptitude with the hammer.
Yeah, and looks like Diesel is going to, we'll see if Diesel comes back to Pod or if they do straight to Catfish, because it is worth noting, doesn't have flippers, so from this angle, you do have boots, so I think there is a water walk you could set up, but it's not a super easy one.
Yeah, picking up that mushroom, though, might make it an interesting option to take, since with the mirror, you can also route that into the wrap up to that area. Since you just mirror in front of the potion shop. Ooh, misplacing that portal by just a tile. Oh, maybe that was intentional. I don't know that much tech. As Krithel starts Hammer Blind. First phase is pretty easy, since there's not a head flying around. Now there's a head flying around, which makes it harder.
Yeah,
finding
it is
that
worth noting.
Heart container in that big chest helped.
Yeah, and Krithel does still have a red potion, so.
Yeah, that's one situation where you actually like to find a full heart in a dungeon item check. If you know you're about to do Hammer Blind. Yeah, Diesel just farming those rupee pulls to prepare to go up to King Zora.
Yeah,
very nicely done.
Absolutely, and with that mirror, Diesel is going to be able to very easily route in this front of escape, which neither runner has checked yet. And we do know there is still an item in Dark Cross. So Diesel will be able to do all these checks, mirror out, check Dark Cross, mirror again, and then go to probably up to Zora and do his Dark World checks up there.
Yeah, if they're lucky here, they'll find the lamp down here, which will put the Dark Cross item in logic. Which could potentially be... A lamp would be good to find here, just because that will put the mountain in logic. Neither runner has gone up to the mountain yet because we haven't seen the hook shot. Though with the mirror and the hammer, it is possible to get over to that east side, albeit a little bit slower. Krithel finding the fire rod in the library. Better remove that before we have a second Alexandria.
And so thus far, Diesel hasn't really gotten anything from this play. We'll see if there's something. There's still something here in Zelda's Cell, and then there's something in the Dark Cross.
We're preparing to use the mirror. There's Quake. That's It's not exciting, but it's good to see. Because now, if you make the later on, if you make the Meyer play, if you make the Turtle Rock play, you could be getting lucky. You don't have to hope on that 33%. You got a 66% chance of having what you need. Krithel doing a little archery practice, it looks like.
Yeah, it is worth noting Krithel did not have any money, basically no money, so probably getting money for pod here.
It's a nice little strat to have, honestly. Especially also having the presence of mind to notice that, you know, you're short on money. You want to do dig game. You got to go over to pod. It's easy to forget that you do need 110 rupees to get in, since usually you just have that on hand by that point. Diesel finding the Dark Cross item, which I was mistaken earlier. The Dark Cross item was in logic since we did have Fire Rod in hand. It's a little obnoxious to have that item available logically via Fire Rod. Lamp is a lot more convenient, but every single room on the way there has a torch, which puts it in logic if you have Fire Rod.
Yeah, which is an interesting thing because actually a lot of those torches are far enough in the room. In Eastern, like to Armos, the torches are right there, things like that. But for Escape, a lot of the torches are far enough in the room that if you know where the torch is, you probably already know the room. So
yeah, sometimes it's easier to just do the room in the dark rather than try to find the torch. Since those hitboxes can be a little bit obnoxious at times, I am notoriously bad at lighting torches in dark rooms. For some reason, I just cannot do it. Even in that room after the big key in Eastern, you just turn left or right and shoot your fire rod, and it never works for me.
So as we're about to see a bunch of checks we've already seen, just take a few seconds here to give everyone a quick race reset. So this is the Go Mode podcast, the gold sword bracket of our mentor tournament. Each runner has a mentor who is sort of talking them through the seeds. As you can see, this is DieselMartini, our 11 seed, mentored by WaltherIV, against Krithel, mentored by Senen, who's our 6th seed. My name is Arusta, and my co-commentator today is Ezmar. Also, shout outs to MM2 NES Cartridge for doing the hard work of tracking, and Jere Dudecia for doing the restream.
So nothing on Catfish. That could be. So was it Diesel that did the flippers checks earlier, or Krithel?
It was Krithel.
Krithel, yeah. So if that had been something important, that could have been bad news for Krithel, because having done all those flippers checks, it would be a very attractive option to orphan. But now if Krithel decides not to go for Catfish, until later if needed, it won't come back to bite him. We've seen a couple seeds where something important such as Flute was on Catfish recently. But that will not be happening today. Krithel making their way over to Hype Cave. We'll be picking up that shield and sword. After, of course, turning in the purple chest that definitely totally still has. Don't even question it. Don't worry about it. See?
Diesel going to show off the King's Tomb, which this is a new check and ends up being nothing.
Yeah, so it's increasingly looking, as we clear more and more overworld checks, that we're going to have to do a dungeon dive at some point to find something that we're going to need. We only have Skull Woods as full clearable. Without half magic, without anything above Fighter's Sword, that makes Mothula a little bit of an uncomfortable fight. Certainly not undoable, especially for, given that we're in gold bracket here, but you'd certainly like to see something else before you commit to it. And there Diesel finds our lamp. And at that point, that makes Mountain a very attractive play because the whole thing is accessible. You don't want to take the time to go the mirror plus hammer route unless you know those checks are going to be in logic and thus are a little more likely to help you. Gonna check Lumberjack on the way just in case.
Yeah, and this is a smart use of routing here. Ends up being useless, but this is probably your easiest chance to do it since they haven't checked it before. Makes a lot of sense to at least know if there might be something hiding there that's going to force you to do Aga. Especially with that having just gotten that lamp, so Aga is basically a sword or a
maybe
cape
deciding not to go to the mountain instead. Maybe deciding to clear Skull Woods first.
Yeah, it is worth noting Diesel also did not clear the Thieves Town, so there's 3 items in Thieves Town, and I believe 1 item in Skull Woods, in addition to 2 crystals here.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense to me. Because again, you can access the eastern side of Death Mountain with either the hook shot or the mirror plus hammer. But if you use the mirror and the hammer, you have to climb all the way up. You know, the normal way you usually go up the first time when you're playing the game vanilla, which, you know, a lot of us haven't done in a while. And then you sort of have to pound down the pegging, wrap around the top, and it's significantly slower than just using the hook shot to go right over. So if you can find the hook shot before going up, you can save a substantial amount of time on those mountain checks. And so doing 2 dungeons to wrap into some of those extra item checks is a smart play here. You do the dungeon, since even if you don't find that hook shot that you'd like to see, you're at least making progress.
Yeah, especially with them being crystals that you have to do at some point. It's 4 items that it doesn't necessarily cost you time since you had to do it eventually.
Yeah, taking care in this hellway. You don't want to take too many hits. It's pretty easy if you can just take all the hits you want, but you know, you don't want to rely on that, because especially if you have to do well, with the fighter's sword in hand, we can do the blind script. So it's not too bad, but it's never a bad idea to be careful in that room.
Yeah, and it is worth noting that Diesel does have powder, and there is 1 bunny beam outside the blind cell that you can powder for a free fairy.
Yeah, that's sort of one of the things that's a little tricky. It's tempting when you're starting out running to try to do rooms quickly, and that's not always a very good idea. Because, you know, sometimes, okay, you take extra hits. Well, I'm not dead yet, so I still saved the time. But if you do that too much, you can end up dying, which is a much bigger time loss than just taking a little extra time to do the rooms safely. So it's even in high level play, you will see runners taking a little bit of extra time to make sure they get through a room safely, because they don't want it coming back to bite them later.
Yeah, I mean, really, the way to think about it, this is one of the things that Kern, who's one of the mentors in our tournament, very active within the Link to the Past community, sort of discusses is basically your health should be viewed almost as a resource. Like, there are some rooms where taking a couple hits makes the room so much faster that you want to just tank the damage and deal with it. There are other rooms where you need to be careful, or, hey, I know I've got a tough boss fight coming up, that you don't want to take the hit.
Yeah, and some of it depends on your item layout too. Certain options may be available to you with certain item loadouts, and you need to be aware of when those options aren't going to be available, and you might want to use a damage boost instead. So it's like, oh, you know, if I can't think of any specific examples off the top of my head, but, you know, say there's a room where if you have the hook shot, you can skip a pit, but if you don't have the hook shot, you might want a damage boost or something. I don't know if that's actually a thing that exists, but you can be like, okay, well, I don't have the hook shot, so I need to be careful with my health because I'm going to need it for that room.
Yeah, I mean, an obvious example there would be the in Ice Palace. If you know you don't have the hook shot in that room with all the jellies and you're going that way, you're going to need to bomb jump. So you need to make sure you have the health to survive a bomb jump and probably getting hit by a jelly on the way.
Krithel being very liberal with that fire rod. So probably not going to be relying on fire rod strats in here, unless he still has that green potion.
He turned away the green for a red earlier, but I
Okay.
think he bought a blue at some point.
Okay, well in that case, that makes a decent amount of sense. Yeah, we're going with hammer strats here. Probably until you hit low health, you try the hammer strats. You would like to hang on to those safeties.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hang on to the hammer strats, and then once you have to use the blue potion, since you already did the magic refill, that's when you pull out the fire rod.
Yeah, I think hammer strats are an often overlooked aspect of Link to the Past randomizer running. Because if you're familiar and comfortable with that hammer hitbox, it can help you out in a lot of situations. Because sometimes, you're just not given the swords you'd like to see. And even though the hammer is a lot harder to use than a sword, it does tempered sword damage. So it can be very helpful in a lot of boss fights, including Mothula, which was very well done by Krithel.
Yeah, and for those of you who are watching, I imagine everybody's probably familiar with the podcast itself, but there is a podcast, of course, that is the Go Mode podcast, and they actually have done a couple episodes on swordless mode, talking a lot about the hammer strats and all that recently. So if you're not familiar with it, definitely take a look at, I believe it's actually the most recent episode where they discuss the swordless and how to handle hammer.
Yeah, that's sort of the flip side of the coin to the the tricks and glitches and skips that everybody needs to be familiar with. You got the bomb jumps, you've got icebreaker, you've got Harapot. Those help too, but it's also important to have the little gameplay tricks in your pocket. Being comfortable doing these maybe harder strategies. I would say that's just as important.
Oh, and that is a nice find there by Krithel.
Especially given that we do have to do Swamp Palace. If you don't have to do Swamp Palace, then it's a technically skippable item, but you do like to see it in case you end up looking for an item later, even if you have Pendant Swamp. But since it's a crystal, we like seeing that.
Yeah, just to call out one small optimization here that you saw from both runners is you see how Diesel is actually going to the boss first. Krithel did the same thing. Both of them know there's only one item left, so it's much more sensible to do the boss first since you know you have to do it. Maybe you find the item there and you can skip that bridge chest. It doesn't work out in this seed since the item is on the bridge chest, but in a lot of seeds that would be the smart call. Might save you some time.
It loses time over going there first, but only if that's where the item is. It loses less. It saves more time than it would lose. Basically, that's sort of the math you do there, the calculus, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, and the time it saves is basically a menu or two to pull out your mirror. So you're talking about losing a couple seconds for potentially gaining 15, 20, 30 seconds. It's definitely a gamble you always make.
Yeah, it's a similar position to Left Side Swamp, though there's a lot more nuance in that. Yeah, you weigh the time you save if you go ahead and do it versus the time you potentially lose if you decide to go the other way. It's a game of balancing things. So Krithel is going to be coming up on that. Yeah, Krithel just got that lamp, actually. So we'll see if Krithel makes the Skull Woods play into Death Mountain.
Krithel just finished up Skull Woods, but they will...
I'm getting a little bit confused as to which runner is which right now. So I saw Diesel over in Skull Woods. And I was like thinking, oh yeah. Even though, yeah, we did just see Krithel do that, so...
Yeah, what Krithel has done, effectively just as a race reset, basically Krithel has dipped Eastern Palace, which Diesel has not. Both runners have sort of done the same dungeons otherwise. Krithel has done a few more overworld checks, but Diesel has done a few more, front of escape. So that's sort of the big differences thus far.
Yeah, and we haven't seen anything game-changing in any of those differences. Oh, we see Hookshot on we probably saw that earlier too.
No,
but,
Diesel did not. Diesel was in the light world, so Diesel.
Oh yeah, Diesel was in the light world that whole time. Yeah, so now we know where Hookshot is, and it is behind Cape. ordinarily you need hookshot to get through to the end of that, but logic does not demand it. So that is a very legal spot for hookshot to be. Similarly, hookshot can be in hookshot cave since there's one chest you can get to if you have the boots.
Yeah, and also, I'm sure Krithel is not going to check it, but that sign that Krithel just mirrored next to, in case you're a newer runner, that sign actually does tell you that you don't need hookshot to do it. It says something like you need cape, but not hookshot.
Yeah, some people do have some trouble with doing the hookshotless strategy. It can be a little rough if you hesitate even a little bit, or if you sort of misplace yourself. But I found it to be pretty easy to get the hang of. But we're not going to be seeing that for a little bit, not until we find that cape.
Yeah, but it is worth noting that Diesel has gone to the Dark World just to check Graveyard Ledge and route in the check here. So Diesel will have that knowledge, so that won't be a big advantage for Krithel.
Yeah, but knowing that, then it makes perfect sense to go up the mountain, since you don't want to hang around for cape 2 before you go up the mountain to just potentially save the time of going up. You just take the hit and go the long way around. Clear Tower of Hera on the way, not a big deal.
Yeah, because Hera is a crystal as well, so you can clear a crystal dungeon on your way here.
Interesting to note that for a while now, Desert Palace has been in play. Accessible with the mirror. Only 2 chests in there.
They don't have flute, so they can't get up to Maya.
Oh, that's right. They don't have flute. I don't know why I thought they had flute.
But it is something that neither runner, both of them checked Agina, I believe, but neither runner checked the Desert Ledge, which makes sense since you can't access it anyways with their equipment. So essentially, once they get flute, that's going to be a very attractive play because you get 2 items in the shed, you get knowledge of what pendant you need for Mire, you get checkerboard cave, you get ledge. Like basically, it's 5 or 6 items, very easy, plus knowledge. So I wouldn't be surprised to see people immediately go to flute once they get there.
Yeah, we will not be seeing Harapot today since the hookshot is still on Bumper Cave Ledge.
So an interesting move there by Diesel. Went up to the mountain and then saved and quit away.
I suppose that makes a certain amount of sense since you can now save and quit just to pick up where you left off.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely makes sense, but it is worth noting that with both Mitts and the Mirror, there's a lot of items up there on Death Mountain which are accessible, plus this clearable crystal that we're seeing Krithel do.
This is a dangerous bomb jump. Krithel successfully executes that bomb jump. It's a little more dangerous than your average bomb jump since a fall does not simply put you back where you started, but sends you down to the floor below. That's definitely one you want to get first try. Since if you fall down there, it almost would have been worth it to go up and do it the vanilla way.
Krithel handling Moldorm fairly nicely with hammer. Well done.
Ooh, that's not what you want to see on the Moldorm.
Yeah, I was not counting items. I did not see if they got
they got the bug catching net from the big chest, and so maybe they saw another item. I guess I didn't see the chest right in front of that. I would assume that they did get both of the items since they're not going back in for the basement, or they're deciding to skip it. Probably we can get a sanity check from chat on that one. So yeah, it looks like Diesel was just wanting to clear up those flippers checks, the waterfall ferry, I think. I always guess right as I see what they're actually going to do.
Yeah, I guess Diesel just wanted, having just found those flippers, trying to push those and check those out. Though it is worth noting that it's not a desirable check, but Swamp Palace is in logic for everything except the backside. So I can't imagine anyone would want to do it knowing where Hookshot is already, but it is possible Cape could be there.
It is possible too that 4 out of the 6 chests in or checks rather in Swamp Palace could be behind the Hookshot, which would be a very unenviable position to be in if you decide to make that swamp dip.
Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think it's a dip that you would want to make. It's just on the table. That's the kind of dip that in like 100-person qualifier, someone makes, someone, ends up doing well, and then everybody else just decides, nah, let's not do that.
Yeah, it would be a big brain play to make that. And there is our bow. So we get our Master Sword, our second boomerang, and our bow. So basic equipment loadout is looking pretty good right now.
Yeah, and it is worth noting on Krithel's side, that puts, of course, they're going to play out the mountain checks because they're right here, but that bow does put a clearable Eastern in play and a clearable pod in play, which neither runner has touched pod.
Yeah, and that's also some fantastic little routing play by Krithel there with leaving that mirror portal right in front there. Exiting from Paradox Cave, going straight into the portal, and then hitting Super Bunny Cave. It's a routing you can sometimes do if you've got certain equipment. A lot of runners will sort of muscle memory something else and forget to take advantage of that when they can. We'll see if Diesel has worse luck against Moldorm.
And TR is Ether, so they don't have Samaria, so they can't actually do anything there, but both runners do have Ether to get in there.
Yeah, Krithel making this Hookshot Cave check, because as I mentioned before, Hookshot can be on that chest. We know it's not, but since we need Cape to get Hookshot, Cape could be in this chest. It's not, but it could have been. And I imagine with Hammer in hand, we will see Spike Cave before leaving the mountain for good.
Yeah, because at this point, what Krithel's leaving behind is just Spike Cave the tablet, and then those 3 items in Hookshot Cave, which at this point, if you look at our equipment, basically we need Red Cane and then Capes, and then some way to X, and then Flute. So there's a decent chance you might never need to come back.
Yeah, Turtle Rock being a pendant. Ooh, is there a fairy in one of those bottles?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they both found a fairy in a pre-filled fairy bottle.
Yeah, I was sort of questioning that until I looked at which item they had equipped, and it's like they wouldn't still have Hammer equipped if they didn't have if they mistimed something there. Interesting note, this check is not yet in logic since we don't have the Cane of Burna or the Cape yet. Even though it's very possible to do, the game does not put it in logic. So if an item we needed was in there, for example, if Cape was in there, that would mean that the Cane of Burna was accessible somewhere else in the world. And with the bow in hand, the lamp, and the hammer, I imagine we're going to see Palace of Darkness into Eastern Palace here on Krithel's side.
Yeah, I mean, that's completely logical play because it gets you 5 items in pod, another item, I believe there's still an item in Eastern on Armos, and then it's also our second red crystal, so it gets you 2 more items from Pyramid Fairy. So this is the obvious play, and it makes perfect sense why you'd want to do this right now.
Yeah, at this point, since Cape only really unlocks one item, that item on Bumper Cave Ledge, it's So items can sort of be placed in varying depths, right? And it sort of depends based on, like, to the game's logic, depends on how much that they can lock. So an item that only locks away one location really can be placed in a lot of different places. So you kind of have to take a fine-toothed comb when you're going through this, knowing that hookshot is on Bumper Cave Ledge, because you don't want to leave cape somewhere that you could have picked it up. And for that exactly that reason, we see Diesel dipping down into Hookshot Cave, checking that one chest that's available, because you'd hate to leave the cape here.
And looks like Diesel is going to go pick up that half magic. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's a nice safety to have.
Yeah, especially only being at Master Sword. Right now, Master Sword Silverless is not off the table. So if it comes down to that, I mean, I suppose it wouldn't be that bad to pick it up on the way to Ganon's Tower, but at that point, you really don't want to have to stop. But if you're going up to Ganon's Tower and you still only had the Master Sword and no silvers, you might want to have that half magic for that fight.
Yeah, especially since it is worth noting that they both... Diesel already knows he will be getting cape since it's hard required to beat the seed, since Hookshot's up there. So cape is cape and half magic is very nice to have if you're trying to do Master Sword in that second phase.
And both runners playing it safe on the mountain, not careful not to orphan any of these checks. An identical performance from Diesel, dying in on pretty much the same pixel like Krithel did for that fairy revive. And now we're getting into the meat of Pod on the left side here. Tempered Sword, Master Sword Silverless is off the table. Yeah, now it looks like Diesel is making the same play that Krithel made a few minutes ago, going over to Pod via the same route. Ooh, messes up the hammer dash there.
Yeah, though it is worth noting that not only is Krithel a little ahead in Pod here, Krithel has also cleared the first half of Eastern, so Krithel is going to gain some time there as well when Diesel decides to go through Eastern.
Yeah, especially given that I think we did see runners go all the way around to the, Krithel go all the way around to the dark room.
Yes, Krithel went through the dark room.
It wasn't for the big key to open the big chest, but so we know that Diesel won't necessarily have to do that. But we're short enough on items right now that we don't want to leave something back there.
Yeah, if I remember right, I believe Krithel found like the compass there, but the fact that Krithel did that does mean that there is an item on Armos, so it's unlikely Diesel would just decide to skip that entire side.
Yeah, that's not a redip that makes sense to do afterwards. Some dungeons, like for example the Skull Woods that we saw earlier, it makes sense to just do the boss first because it's not too bad to go back in and get the chest later. In Eastern though, that's pretty much the deepest part of the dungeon, so it makes sense to do it while you've already done the first half. And it kind of puts you right back where you need to be to go to do the boss anyway, so that's the one that you check every time if you know there could be an item there.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a gamble you decide to make, but knowing that he needs at least 3 items, Cape, Samaria, and Flute, I can't imagine you make that call. If it was like you only needed 1 item, maybe you bet that, hey, the 1 item, I have so many other locations, but not with 3 to go.
Now, what do you think, if we see Samaria soon, what do you think about Green Pendant TR? We've got the medallion to get in on both sides. And with that green pendant, Turtle Rock is worth 7 items.
Well, you can't clear it. You could play it through all the way to Laser Bridge, but they don't have Ice Rod.
Could be in there.
But it could be in there.
Ice Rod is the one item that is least necessary for a Turtle Rock dip, since you only need it to full clear the dungeon.
I don't know. I feel like I would...
It's an unattractive play. It's an ugly play. But it could be on the table. As long as we don't see that that Cane of Samaria, our runners are safe from that timeline. But we could find ourselves living in it. Silvers! That's a sight for sore eyes. So Tempered Sword Silvers is a far cry from Master Sword regular bow. Not picking up that half magic, not too big of a deal for Krithel.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the TR play at this point is I'm not running a map tracker, so I don't know exactly what they have available, but just thinking back, I think combined they've both checked most of the overworld checks, and you can have a highly unattractive swamp play, you can have Ice Palace for 3 items, doing it without Icebreaker.
It is Pendant Ice Palace, which means that there are 2 progression items in there, in my experience.
That's true. But they've got, if Krithel doesn't find anything useful here on Armos, there's a lot of unattractive checks on the table, so of those, TR might, even Ice Rodless TR, might be the most attractive of a bunch of bad options.
Yeah, Pod wasn't barren. We did see Tempered Sword and Silvers there, but neither of those were the items that we'd have loved to see in Palace of Darkness, because if we saw... I mean, the cane would not be great to see at this point, but we would have loved to see the flute or the cape. Because the flute would allow us to go check the mire area. The cape would allow us to go get the hookshot and full clear swamp. Both things we have to do at some point. So that's what I imagine our runners are hoping to see here. We'll see in just a second what is on the Armos Knights. If it's Samaria, then this is a... this is looking not fun. That opens up a lot of unattractive options. I would assume we'd see an Ice Palace dip before we see them just straight up go to the mountain and take the Turtle Rock dive. Neither would be an unreasonable play, in my opinion. Silver Arrow's making quick work of those knights, and we get a shield.
So at this point, it does look like Ice Palace is the play, because they're sort of... I mean, I think Krithel has checked almost everything on the overworld. It's 3 items. It's not a play you love, but...
Yeah, I would say the 3 items in Ice Palace. The issue is if, one of those items is on Cold Stare and Ice Palace is Samaria locked, that's a risk you take. However, the available checks in Swamp Palace aren't much more attractive either. We'll see which play Krithel decides to make.
Yeah, Krithel looks like going to make the red bomb play presumably first.
Oh yeah, that would be
it's really
the
part
play
of
to make.
pod checks at this point.
Yeah, if we don't see anything on this Pyramid Fairy, that's it's not a nice seed at this point. Sometimes you sort of feel like, oh man, this is such a mean seed, but it's really not. You just haven't checked the right places. But we've checked a lot here. We're an hour in, got a lot of checks out of the way. If we don't see something on Pyramid Fairy, then this is a rude seed, officially.
Yeah, though it is worth noting they haven't had to touch any pendant dungeons. I don't think either of them has even entered a pendant dungeon yet. So. Oh, and Krithel showing off the very nice, precise, but very nice tech where you can drop the bomb and do the dashes in the exact timing to pick it right back up for free.
Now, is that a timing based thing, or is it just getting just changing your super tile or something like that? There's the cape. Okay. My question is now irrelevant because we have the cape. I don't have to vamp for time. We've got that hook shot, so we're gonna see swamp.
Yep. Yeah, going straight for a hook shot and then to swamp is the obvious play here because you have to, you have to do it anyways. It's 6 items, etc. And then
yeah, that is definitely
if then you don't find something, then you start thinking, do I want to do Ice Palace or do I want to go up for Hookshot Cave, those 3 items?
Yeah, at this point, you definitely would prefer to see Cape over Flute, as Flute doesn't necessarily open a lot to you. But with the Cape, we can go get that hook shot, and then it's a lot more reasonable to hope that we can find the Flute and or Samaria down in Swamp. We'd like to see the Flute first, but Samaria first wouldn't be the worst thing in the world because it does make the Ice Palace checks faster. It does open Turtle Rock though. so we'd like to find Samaria after we find the Flute.
Yeah, and to answer a question, Xylo Price, one of our MT admins, thank you very much for your work, mentioned in chat that how the bomb works essentially is you have to screen transition on when the timer is on 0, which is something that's pretty much only viable when you do when you have boots, of course. If you don't have boots, you really can't make the timing work. You just don't move fast enough.
Yeah, Krithel makes that hook shotless bumper cave second try. Yeah, Krithel with a pretty commanding lead here. Not Diesel doesn't have really too many checks over Krithel at this point, and Diesel just making their way through Eastern Palace right now, as Krithel is going to be entering Swamp in just a few moments here. And as was mentioned earlier, Diesel having to do the, well, not having to, but it would be a little unreasonable to not do this slower routing going through the Dark Room to the big key chest.
Yeah, and while we see the this, since we're about an hour in, just to give a quick race reset again, this is the Go Mode Podcast Mentor Tournament. This is the gold sword bracket between our 6 seed Krithel and our 11 seed DieselMartini. Krithel is being mentored by Senen. Diesel is being mentored by WaltherIV. Both of these runners did an excellent job in the group stages. I believe Krithel was 5-1 and Diesel was 4-2. Please give our runners a follow. They're both, both excellent people. My name is Arusta, and my co-commentator today is Ezmar. Also, shout out to MM2 NES Cartridge doing the real hard work here of doing the tracking, keeping us on point, and then Jere Dudecia, who is doing the restream.
Yeah, now let's try to look back a little bit. Where did this lead that Krithel has come from primarily? So I'm kind of having trouble bringing it to mind. Where did all of this time come from? Was it just the early flippers checks that Diesel did with the fake flippers?
No, Krithel was the one who did them with the fake flippers. I think the big thing is that Krithel seems like they've been doing a little better just on overall movement, and that sort of adds up. And then I also think the other big thing is before the pod dip, all that, or before the mountain dip, they were more or less tied. They'd both done a bunch of different checks, and then Diesel did all the checks that Krithel had already done for nothing, whereas Krithel, I believe, has skipped a few of the overworld checks that Diesel has done.
Also, I remember that Krithel did only single dip Thieves Town. Ended up, I think, doing the hammer blind the first time around, rather than Diesel, who came back with a sword and did it that way. I'm less sure about that than I usually am. For some reason, this race, I'm getting the two runners confused more often than I usually would. Maybe it's the blonde hair on both of their sprites.
And Diesel has also done Front of Escape, which Krithel has not done
Yes,
Front of
that's
Escape
true.
or Dark Cross at all.
Yeah, right now we are Flute and Samaria away from Go mode. As I mentioned earlier, our runners would prefer to see the Flute first. Seeing Samaria first opens up the possibility of Flute being in Turtle Rock, which we'd love to avoid. Setting up for a diver down here. Bomb strats. Very nicely done.
Yeah, so at this point, really, the big thing that might help Diesel catch up is really that Meyer medallion. Because at this point, Diesel is going to get his hook shot, and he's going to be following Krithell's path here, which of course makes sense. You go to the clearable crystal dungeon with 6 items, but the big thing Diesel has that Krithell doesn't is that Quake medallion. So that would be the big thing.
Yeah, I believe that came from Zelda's Cell.
Yes,
if I'm not mistaken. So that's a hefty advantage to have if it comes into play. So all of you Diesel fans out there, you know what you're hoping to see in front of Misery Mire. And to answer a question in chat, you do need the flute to get into Misery Mire, at least without major glitches. It is possible to get to Misery Mire without the flute. If you trick the game into thinking you do have the flute, which I believe is not allowed. I'm fairly confident that is not allowed here. We haven't seen that flute yet. Krithel did not make the play to skip left side swamp, so avoiding the potential for a double dip, was not able to open the big key chest. There's Arcane of Burna. Doesn't do much for us at this point, but... Yeah, so right now Krithel's gonna hope that the big key is not the item that gets dropped from Argus here. If it is, then you have to wonder if that's where the flute is. I've seen it there before.
I mean, I think if it is, you immediately go back. Like,
yeah, for sure.
It's not even a question. With the fact that they don't really have a ton of other checks, that I don't think it's even a question.
Yeah, it's that or Ice Palace dip. Or cleaning up some of the overworld checks that were skipped, like Escape.
Very nice fight there.
So we don't have to go back in for that big chest. It cannot be opened except from within.
So at this point, the play, I guess, is Ice Palace. Like, that's... I think Krithel does still have a few isolated overworld checks, but none of them are as concentrated as what you're getting out of Ice Palace.
Yeah, without the cane, it's not super fun. But, I wonder what we're seeing here.
I don't think Krithel checked Agina's cave. So
yes.
I have to assume that's what he's checking, which I think doing it here makes a lot of sense. Since it's about as close as you could... Without flute, this is as close as you could possibly get to it.
Yeah, you like to leave Agina's cave until later, just so you can route it in with the mirror and the flute on those Mire checks. But at this point, since you're looking for the flute still, you have to go back and check it. Okay, you know, it would be nice to route this in later, but I still don't have the flute. Could be here. The Krithel is going to be breathing a slightly disappointed sigh of relief. It would be devastating to see the flute here, because you know your opponent could have picked it up at any time. It's just a full heart container, nothing too major, but you did spend the time to go get it.
And looks like Krithel is going to do escape, which is going to give Diesel a nice chance to catch up a little bit here. Because Diesel has already checked that Agina's cave and has full cleared escape. So while Krithel does this check, that's going to give Diesel a decent amount of time to catch up. And I think after this, they're going to be more or less tied.
Yeah, this is where a lot of the time discrepancy came from, was that escape play that Diesel made. This is not a super fast, even with the boots.
Especially since we do know that there is an item on the Dark Cross, so gonna have to mirror out and check it again. Can't just go to Zelda's cell and bail out.
I mean, you could, but at this point, since you're looking for those two last items, and you'd like to see either of them at this point, you don't orphan checks at this stage in the game. Hour 15 in, yeah, you're not gonna skip stuff anymore. It's a big gamble to do that at this point.
Yeah, especially since neither runner has really done a lot of unfortunate, like neither runner's really had unfortunate deaths or anything like that that would make you feel like, oh man, I'm way behind. It's time to take a gamble.
Yeah, both of the runners have seemingly had everything go sort of according to plan. Even the difference in the Thieves Town routing, it seemed planned. Krithel goes in, does the hammer blind. Diesel goes in, doesn't do the hammer blind. But I don't think it was. I think it was very intentional on both of their parts, rather than a sort of last minute decision. It seems that they're both sticking to plan. And Diesel going for the left side. So now not quite all of the time was made up. So Krithel picking up that item in Dark Cross and sort of put on even footing, or evener footing, in terms of checks with Diesel, and still a little bit ahead.
Yeah, but we're now within range where, if Krithel takes an unfortunate death somewhere or something like that, that could easily tie up the game.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it is worth noting that I believe Krithel still has a potion, but does not have any fairies left.
Krithel picked up a fairy in a bottle in the boomerang chest.
Okay.
Which is going to be good news for the Ice Palace bomb jump that may be coming up here. Now the question is, if you see one of the two items you need, for example, if this first chest contains the flute, do you bail out or do you continue on?
I think you continue. I think if it's flute, you bail. If it's Samaria, I think you stay. Because flute unlocks so much, including Meyer itself, though you can't finish it. But Samaria doesn't. I mean, it unlocks TR, which is a decent amount of checks, but it's also a bunch of checks you don't particularly want to do.
Now, is there anything else hiding out, or is it really just Ice Palace here that we have left? Do we have anything else that's lurking?
Nothing else they can access. They've still got the book checks, but they don't have book. They've still got the shovel fetched quest, which they don't have. They can't get it. They can't get it in or desert. So yeah, I think this is about it.
There's always money in the Pendant Ice Palace. It has been a long time since I've seen a Pendant Ice Palace that was not required. Actually, that's not true. I had it happen once recently, but I'm going to consider that an outlier. And Diesel sort of showing off here why it's why Krithel decided to go for the 2 Tempered Sword spins rather than the single Silver Arrow. It's a lot more consistent.
Yeah, and as Roddy Sniper points out in chat, they do have three chests in Hookshot Cave, which just became available when they picked up the hookshot that neither runner has yet checked. I think Krithel has probably made a decent call here. I think this is, when you add in the time it takes to actually climb up the mountain and go all the way up there, I think it's probably 6 of one, half dozen of the other, whether Ice Palace or those 3 checks are quicker.
But yeah, and it's not too bad to go up the mountain after Ice Palace either.
Yeah, and the other thought is,
you sort of want to make the Ice Palace play sort of on the chance that your opponent's not going to like it. Because it's a lot of runners get burned hard by Ice Palace because there's a lot of deep-seated resentment towards this dungeon for a lot of people, and they avoid it even when they really shouldn't.
Yeah, and one way that people often like to look at checks is, is this something that will get better with time? And Hookshot Cave itself doesn't get better, but if you found Cane here, then doing Hookshot Cave after that says, oh, well, I could also check TR while I'm up there.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas, going here first, Ice Palace will never be any different than it is right now.
Yes. So we saw Krithel leave the chest in the spike floor room downstairs, presumably getting it on the way back, or if this is, what we came to look for, we could just leave right now. It's not what we're looking for. We're going to go back downstairs.
Yeah, and that's 2 items thus far if you're counting at home.
Now, I don't know my key logic well enough. Certainly not as well as I should in Ice Palace, but if we have 2 keys here, are we potentially Samaria locked, or is that off the table? Ooh, the Ice Rod. That's spooky. It's ominous.
Yeah. Choosing to save and quit out of there, I think that's an interesting gamble. It does abandon the option for pedestal, or it makes it much, much more uninteresting. But on the other hand, you've already gotten 3 items. The odds of it being on ped rather than the checks you can make up here on Hookshot Cave, potentially, and then potentially either flute what you get once you unlock something else, seems reasonable. Because you do know you're going to get Samaria before you do ped, since Turtle Rock is a pendant.
Yeah, knowing that you get Samaria first, it's not as big of a gamble as it might seem to abandon Ice Palace there. It's sort of one of those things where it's like, okay, well, if it's a ped seed, this is a big mistake. But that's one case in which it's a bad mistake, and pretty much every other case, it's not a mistake. You save the time it would take to complete the dungeon from that point, which is a not insignificant amount of time. Like, at that point, it would still take a minute or 2 to go complete the dungeon. So it's you take the gamble that it's not going to be a ped seed, that you can safely save those 2 minutes.
Yeah. Basically you're gambling for one check. So no, it makes sense.
And there's our cane. I was expecting to see the cane in here. Given how well this flute is hiding from us, and how many checks would be available in Turtle Rock with that cane, that's right now. Turtle Rock is worth 7 checks. The 5 inside the dungeon, plus Mimic Cave, plus that green pendant turn-in. So this isn't looking quite like a ped seed yet. It's getting closer. And again, this is really the only option. Turtle Rock has to have something in here. If it's the flute, we're good. If it's the book, we're upset. Yeah, an hour and a half in, and our inventories are looking pretty full. This has been a very thorough seed so far.
Yeah, and that pause there by Diesel is almost certainly Diesel talking it over with their mentor, Walther IV, who's one of the top tier runners. Probably just Walther talking him through the same thing that we just talked about in terms of, hey, you're going to get Samaria. You probably are far better off not betting on Ped just for this one item.
Yeah, I mean, it's not guaranteed that we're going to find Samaria because, you know, it could be flute into Samaria and Meyer area. But again, I would think it's far more likely to find Samaria first and then find the flute. Just in terms of, you know, the item weighting. And there's our flute. Very conveniently in the chain chomp room. So the seed was quite kind. We are in go mode on Krithel's side.
Yeah, Krithel hit go mode at about 1 hour, 25 minutes, 20 seconds. So we can use that to compare.
Not bad for required. Well, no, not a required ice palace dip. That was completely fruitless, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Basically, in terms of what was required, the only thing that was required was the only pendant that was required was going in that first half of Turtle Rock.
Yeah, not even half. That was the. I mean, it's the what, the fourth available check. Now I forget. We're gonna have to watch on Diesel's side to see where that small key was to see if some time could have been saved there. If we found the small key in that first room and didn't have to go to the fire rod locked room, then that flute could be available a little quicker. I would not imagine we're gonna see that. You want to be thorough at this point when you're looking for the flute. Not even bothering with Mire Shed. We really don't want to see anything else. At this point, you might have checked Mire Shed if you were missing silvers, or we're only at Master Sword still. But having Tempered Sword and silvers, you're perfectly fine just doing the minimum amount required to get to Ganon's tower and fight Ganon.
Yeah, with red mail, Tempered Sword, silvers, cape, and 3 bottles, I can't imagine. Like, there's not really even much safeties that are out there that it could be that Krithel could hope for. Gold sword
Krithel doesn't have the half magic, but I think that we're gonna forego that anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that half magic is nice to have on Diesel's side, but it's not really gonna help make up any time, unfortunately. We're gonna see if we have a God Mire. We do. The goddess of Mires. First check, big key. Mire is an interesting dungeon in that it can be very slow or very, very quick. As Krithel's going to display right here. Let's grab the big key, grab the small key under the pot, and we are good to go. Actually, yeah, we don't need the small key for anything other than to open that quicker door. There are a couple ways to get to that room, one of which doesn't require a key, but it takes a little longer since there's that guaranteed key under the pot. If you find the big key in that chest, you just go that way, which is why runners will check that pot first. I used to hookshot over to it from the bridge, but with the option of the big key being over there, yeah, it's usually a better play to check it first. Yeah, it's true. If our runners had dipped TR as soon as it was available, it would have saved the time that we spent in Ice Palace. I still think the right play was to do Ice Palace first, simply because, well, actually, we did dip TR as soon as it was available, because in order to make it available, they would have had to go to Hookshot Cave first. And that's not a good play if Samaria is in Ice Palace, because that gives you it gives you an extra mountain climb. So it was kind of a rough it was a rough seed in terms of deciding whether or not to skip Pen Ice Palace, just because, you know, Samaria ended up being a mountain climb away.
Yeah, and just to note, while Diesel got their thing and entered go mode, we're starting the Ganon's Tower Big Key guessing game. Put your guess in the chat.
Myers quick.
Between 1 and 22. Diesel is about 3.5 minutes behind based on when they entered go mode.
We've seen that time made up before. The Big Key guessing game can definitely play with it. We'll see if these runners go for the same routing, then it's really, we're not going to gain or lose any time here. But depending on, you know, what they've decided to do, who do you think might decide to make a more aggressive routing in Ganon's Tower?
I feel like Diesel might decide to be a bit more aggressive here, just because Diesel has full cleared the game, has made some double dips. Though I can't imagine either runner is feeling super confident right now, because they both, I mean, Krithel had to double dip Eastern, Diesel had to double dip Thieves Town. And
yeah,
both
neither
of them
terrible
cleared the game.
Yeah, it's neither of them are going to feel super comfortable. Neither of them are going to feel super behind. They're both probably going to play it safe. So it's going to come down to which of the strats is more comfortable. Krithel making a little bit of an error, forgetting to go to the Dark World before going to Ganon's Tower. Getting blocked by the Dead Rocks as well. Making up some time for Diesel here. So Diesel is going to be finishing with this Mire very quickly. Interesting. Not going for the chest that we know contains the big key first. Yeah, so that was an aggressive play from Diesel. It's faster. It's the best case scenario for Godmire is the big key is in that chest and you just go straight there, pick up the big key, small key under the pot, and you go. This is the more reliable, since you get sort of 2 chances to find that big key. If the big key is in that chest that Diesel opened there in the spikes, then that is the best case scenario. Krithel has entered the Ganon's Tower, so we're gonna see when we find that big key. Check number 1, piece of heart. Check number 2, small key. We're gonna see a right side play. Okay. As disappointed as I am to not see Tile Room, I would not do Tile Room in this situation. This is not a situation where I would even feel comfortable doing Tile Room third. And given the way this seed has gone, I wouldn't even feel too disappointed to find the big key on Tile Room, since just the way the logic was laid out, it's sort of hard to imagine a scenario where your opponent would decide to go for that big key play and be rewarded. And they wouldn't be anyway, as we find the big key in chest number somebody who counted.
I believe that was 5. 2 in Hope Room, and then the 3 in that room.
4, 5. Yep, that would be number 5. Zero Nix with the first guess is the one who got that. The first guess that was made was the correct one. Let that be a lesson to all of you big key guessing game players. Get your guesses in as fast as possible, and they'll be more likely to be correct. And that's actually not great news for Diesel. Just because that check was gotten about as quickly as it could be. There's not really a faster way to go check that chest.
Yeah, I mean, Krithel just went straight there. So, if anything, that's probably bad news for Diesel because there's a chance Diesel might try like a Hope Room strat or a full left or something like that and then be really, really.
Yeah, even Dark Magician is going full right. It was the optimal play given that key placement. So I'd say nicely done by Krithel, but you know, it's a spin of the wheel with the big key again with tower. So coming up here, as Krithel goes through the gauntlet, Diesel prepares to enter Ganon's tower. After we see how Diesel decides to route that GT basement, the real deciding factors in this race are going to come down to some of the last bosses, most notably Moldorm 2 and the Ganon fight. Those are the two places where we're most likely to see some time lost or made up. Moldorm 2 with the fall potential and Ganon with the fall potential.
I mean, at this point, Moldorm 2 with Tempered Sword, I think they could potentially fall, but I think the odds are that they won't have a whole lot of trouble here because you can do one spin.
I wouldn't expect it. I wouldn't expect it, but the possibility is on the table. A Krithel takes a fall in the Wizrobe room. A little bit easy to do since the floor is, in fact, invisible. Very nicely done on Wizrobes too. So let's pay attention to Diesel's screen now to see which routing we're taking. A lot of runners will make the decision to go right side depending on whether or not they find a key in this room. Some will hold off unless they find two. Diesel making the play to go right side after finding that one key. And Krithel making sure to pick up that small key. You can only skip it if you've got two in your pocket. Yeah, so Diesel also making the optimal route to the big key. So for Diesel to catch up here, we're gonna have to see some falls from the affectionately nicknamed Trolldorm here. Not today, bucko. Surprised that Krithel didn't open that last chest. Could have contained a bottle with a blue potion inside. Would have been handy to have on hand. Risky strategy, not passing up a potential blue potion. But we'll see how it plays out as we enter advanced agonometry here.
Yeah, and timing-wise, Diesel is about 4 minutes behind on picking up that big key.
All single hits so far. Not ideal. Some of them would have been doubles if not for the blue balls from Aghanim. Very nice setup, though. And Krithel finishes the Aga 2 fight. Ganon rises from the defeated corpse of the wizard, turns into a bat, and flies away. So I think a lot of this came down to some routing decisions. Krithel's routing ended up being more convenient in certain places. I can't think of any checks that Krithel made that didn't lose much time to route when they did it. Even the Eastern double dip made a lot of sense at the time, and whereas Diesel's double dip of Thievestown, it might have been advisable to just finish Thievestown at that point. Taking the time to go through Thievestown again later on ended up, costing some movement time in the overworld to get there, some time in the dungeon to do the front again. Krithel moving on to phase 4 of the Ganon fight. This is where cockiness and overconfidence can hurt you. I wouldn't expect it to hurt Krithel here, but a nice double hit. There we go. There's the overconfidence. So that's a 1 Ganon fall. It's not quite going to be enough. Krithle's going to be able to get back up there pretty quick. Though if that happens another time, or if having used the fire rod there, where it's draining that magic, Krithel or Diesel rather can play it a little bit safer with the magic, with that half magic. Ganon round 2, fight. Now that's gonna be hard on Krithel's mental, I feel. Neither runner has declared that they're finished yet. You don't know where your opponent is. You fall on Ganon, you're gonna be sweating this whole fight. Just please don't let them finish while I'm fighting Ganon. Please don't let them finish. Ooh, Diesel runs out of magic, can't use the fire rod to light that lamp.
You can get it with the lamp. It's kind of precise, but you can get it with the lamp.
Yeah, I would decide to just grab that half magic anyway, or the full magic refill anyway.
And Ganon deciding to make Krithel pay for falling down by teleporting a ton of extra times.
Yeah, worth noting, after the first Ganon fight, the RNG that you get is going to be different. So if both runners have a single fight against Ganon, they're both going to have exactly the same fight in terms of where Ganon ends up placing himself. And there's the last hit. All Krithel needs to do is not fall off the bridge, and we're golden here.
And get your GGs in chat. Finishing with an official time of 1 hour, 42 minutes, and 56 seconds. Krithel has finished in first place. Congratulations to them and their mentor, Senen. We're going to see if maybe we can get some of them in for an interview.
And Diesel's going to be finishing up Aghanim 2 and heading into the Ganon fight shortly thereafter.
waiting for Diesel to finish up his here. And Krithel has been, as pointed out in chat by Luma with the admins. Krithel will be facing Fred, aka Merc, next week. That the top, I believe Fred was number 3, Krithel was the number 6. Be a fantastic race to watch. For all of us for watching, we'll get an interview started, but really appreciate everyone who came and watched. It was a very good race. We're going to see if we can get the interview started here in just a sec.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, GG's to Krithel and Senen on that win. Despite that fall on Ganon, you guys didn't let it get to you, and you finished it out.
Yeah, that was
that
scary.
didn't feel good.
That was a scary fall.
Yeah, I was just talking at the time about how it's like, okay, on to phase 4. This is where confidence bites you. And,
Diesel just took basically the same fall too.
Yeah.
So, thoughts on the Steed?
I mean, it was interesting enough, knowing that hook shot was there. Obviously, it took most of the seed to find it. The biggest question mark for us was after that, after that and Swamp, where do we go? Do we go Ice Palace? Do we go Hookshot Cave? We went Ice Palace. Not sure we're happy with that decision, but it worked out.
Yeah, both of you guys decided to go to Ice Palace first, and we were talking about that a lot at the time. I would say that it makes sense to go Ice Palace first, because if you go Hookshot Cave and it's not there, it's definitely the safe play to go to Ice Palace. Just because otherwise, if that's the right play, if going to Ice Palace is the right play, not doing that costs you another mountain climb.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, when we entered Ice Palace, I said, yeah, now that I think more about it, I think it was the wrong play. Because, basically, it's more, the mountain play is more dense, it's more fast to check, and even if you have to reclimb the mountain afterward, it's not, like, it's still better than doing Ice Palace for nothing. And yeah, I think the correct play was the mountain here, and I made that point right after we entered Ice Palace, so we were already in there, and we decided to stay in Ice Palace. But yeah,
We certainly weren't leaving at that point, but
yeah,
it's a coin flip. We were certainly hoping after getting the Ice Rod and Ice Palace that it was on Trinex. That would have made it the best play, but
yeah, because Trinex locked 3 checks: the pedestal, the green pendant, and itself. So if Ice Rod was required, that would have made amazing.
Yeah, another fall from Diesel on phase 4 of Ganon. Unfortunate.
Yeah, Ganon today was not.
So after doing Ice Palace and going up to Hookshot Cave, which item were you expecting to find there, and which item were you hoping to find there?
At what point? Sorry.
After you did Ice Palace, when you guys both needed both Samaria and Flute, which item were you hoping to find up there in Hookshot Cave?
Oh,
I
some
think
Maya,
Flute.
definitely.
would
Really?
Flute not have been better? Because then the only thing we really have is Maya area at that point. I guess on Desert.
Yeah, but
Blocks.
I mean, yeah, with Somaya, you just have to do Total Rock and you'll find your item. So.
Well, it's sort of either way, you know exactly where you have to go. If you get the Cane of Samaria, you're going to the northeast corner of the map. If you get the Flute, you're going to the southwest corner of the map. So
Yeah, but then you have to decide between Desert and Maya, and I think Somaya is just more like
Makes it easier.
yeah,
An
it's
easy
straightforward.
decision.
You know exactly what you're going to do.
yeah, Flute would have opened up the possibility of, okay, do I big brain Mire and hope the Cane is in there against all odds?
Yeah, you end up gambling again. So, thankfully, we didn't have to do that.
One thing that could have been funny is Somaya and Shovel in the Hookshot Cave.
Yeah, well,
Because
we're
then you have,
before.
Then you have to decide between Turtle Rock and going back for just shovel.
Yeah, if you get shovel in Turtle Rock, you just keep going at that point.
Yeah, but if it's
please don't make me dig that up.
if it's in Hookshot Cave, I mean you're not that invested yet. I don't know.
Another interesting divergence between your two routes, and I think one of the things that saved a little bit of time was Diesel committed to a double dip on Thieves Town rather early, didn't decide to go all the way through with Hammer the first time.
Oh. Yeah, we had a bottle, so with a bottle it's not...
Yeah, we were quite healthy. I mean, Hammer Blind isn't something I've massively practiced, so I needed the potion on it, but I was pretty sure with as much health as we had and the bottle, I could muddle my way through it.
And Diesel getting his 4th hit on Ganon. Get your GGs in, everyone.
So, what decided, like, how far behind or ahead was she, was he?
So Diesel, so when you both got your, when you both entered Gomo, Diesel was about 3.5 minutes behind. And that was about the same through the Ganon's Tower, Big Key Hunt, and all that. You both did the same full right route.
Okay. So yeah, that
close
Ganon
up to the end and just those Ganon falls.
Yeah, that Ganon fall must have got it pretty close.
Yeah.
Ganon, give us, Ganon, take us away.
And Diesel finishing with an official race time of
1:51:03.
Yeah, so just shy a little more than 8 minutes. I can't do math very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like we said, that difference, it was about 3.5 minutes on the big key. The big difference is just, unfortunately, Diesel took another Ganon fall that really pushed up that gap. And
yeah, that looks like we're getting them in chat. Got them in the green room, getting fluffed up. Got to get presentable before they come on stream.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's hard to keep your cam after one fall on Ganon. It's...
And
Yeah,
we
welcome.
joined.
GG's to Diesel and Walther.
Thank you.
GG's.
Yo,
GG.
GG's to you too.
So big picture, what are you guys thinking about the seed? Diesel, like, what did you think about the way it went? What did you think about some of the decisions you had to make, etc.?
Well, I felt obviously I wish there were a couple of execution things that I wish I could have done a little bit better. I did take kind of an early death in the early Dark World that I think set me back quite a bit. And then, man, it was really nesting that flute really badly.
Yeah, as far as the late game went, both of you kind of routed it the same way, both deciding to go to Ice Palace instead of taking the risk of going up to Turtle Rock, or rather Hookshot Cave. Finding after some early divergence, it kind of just railroaded you back onto the same path.
Yeah, we thought when it comes to the choice between Ice Palace and the mountain, I was talking to Walther about it, and they were both 3 items, 3 in Hookshot Cave and 3 in Ice Palace. But the time it takes to climb up the mountain, if it wasn't there, then we would have to leave and then climb up the mountain again. We just decided Ice Palace was the better play.
Yeah, and one other thing I have to ask: how that second fall during the Ganon fight? How much of that was because you'd seen that the race had already been completed? I'm trying to give you an out here.
Yeah, oh no, that's totally it. Yeah, that's what it was. 100%. Oh yeah, no, I guess I'm going back to practice again, and I mean, I've fallen to him a couple of times lately, and it doesn't feel good. But I'll just boot up the practice hack and get working on it.
Yeah, honestly, I find that it's it becomes easier to fall to Ganon the more confident you get with the fight. When I was first starting, I rarely fell to Ganon, but as you get more confident, then you start putting yourself in those dangerous positions a little bit more. And it's, oh, whoopsie, there I go.
Because I do feel like I've been falling a lot more than I used to.
Yeah, absolutely, and that wasn't the fall I would have taken if I wasn't just trying to get that last phase down as quick as possible.
Yeah. We got. What's funny, before the race, we were talking about another Ganon fall that happened in the tournament, and I think we got like basically the same thing this time, because like when you get hit by the bat, you need to stop pressing any direction on your D-pad to not be pushed back in the opposite direction. And this time we got hit by the bat, but the bat pushed us into Ganon, and Ganon pushed us into the void. And yeah, not much you can do about it, except not put yourself in this situation.
Yes, I mean, I guess there wasn't a whole lot else to say about that seed. You know, it's hiding the flute, but you know, after the sort of early Dark World divergence, you guys made pretty similar decisions, and you know, just came down to execution and slight routing optimizations.
Yeah, that flute was buried pretty deep. But other than that, I mean, it seemed kind of like a straightforward seed. Like, by the time we were looking for it, I mean, we had checked a lot of other places in the periphery, so it's like, all right, when we knew early on that hookshot was on the bumper ledge, we saw that pretty early. So once we got the cape, it was just a natural progression to get the hookshot, and then you know, the hookshot cave for the cane into the flute, and so it seemed like a fairly linear path.
Yeah, because it was buried so deep, every decision you made, you just ended up making the other decision as well. So the only real one that mattered was, did you go up to Hookshot Cave or Ice Palace, and we both did the same thing with Ice.
But yeah, with that, Krithel will be continuing on in the tournament, and you know, well, DieselMartini will be you know, back to the practice room. A very good showing from both of you. You know, it was, again, 3 minutes going into GT, and that was all it was. And you know, Krithel taking that fall to Ganon, that could have made it a very close race, but you know, that's what it comes down to at the end of these races, which is why they're so fun to watch. But yeah, GG's to both of you.
Thank you. Yeah, GG's, Krithel.
Thanks.
Good luck on the rest of the
GG's.
tournament.
Thank you very much.
And with that, we're gonna wrap it up, I think, for the day. I don't think we have any other restreams scheduled for today. I think the next one is going to be
Yes,
maybe
the next
1 second here.
Yep, the next restream is actually scheduled for tomorrow at just after 2 o'clock Eastern time. That will be between Virtual Cat and Shakupal. That is in our Gold Sword bracket. So keep your eyes out on the Go Mode Podcast or the Go Mode Podcast schedule for that. We also have restreams tomorrow at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time and 9 o'clock. So it's going to be a pretty packed day tomorrow, but that will be it for today. Again, thank you very much to our runners, DieselMartini and Krithel. Thank you to the mentors, Senen and WaltherIV. Thank you to co-com Ezmar and myself, Arusta. And then big thanks to our tracker and our tracker, to NES, and then also to Jere Dudecia for doing the restream. Thank you, everyone, and definitely give our runners a follow. Definitely follow the podcast if you're not already, and have a good night.